very, very happy this Friday because I don't know. Every Friday comes and I'm just like, yay, the weekend. Or maybe, no, every Friday comes and I'm like, yay, Friday 15. That's what I should be saying. So, welcome everybody. I'm Steph Lee. I'm the founder of Host Agency Reviews. And this is the Friday 15, where every Friday at 12 p.m. Central Time, we answer your industry questions. And today we have with us a co-host from Travel Edge. We have Michelle Leal. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Yes, I love the Fridays as well.
I know.
Aloha Friday, I call them. Aloha.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Used to live in Hawaii.
Aloha Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I see we have Getaway by TJB in the comments, so thank you for joining us. Well, let's see. We've got a lot to cover today. So a quick note before we get started. So our survey has officially launched, our annual survey. And then there's a new feature here I'm going to put up this QR code. Okay, so you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/survey, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the QR link with your phone. But that will take you to the survey. It just takes a few minutes, depending on what your situation. It can take anywhere from 2 minutes to maybe 7 minutes to take. Not a lot of time, but it helps us provide that information, those reports that we push out to everyone that tells you how much advisors are making based on kind of their niche or where they are, their experience level, if they're hosted or independent. Tons and tons of information in there. And one thing to note is that this year, we are going to start charging for the fees. So if you take the survey, though, you get to get you get to take the report for free afterwards. You get it as part of like a thank you. So that's an added bonus, because these reports, if you've ever checked them out, last year, both of our reports were 65 pages for hosted and independent. So they're really in depth. They're a great value. And I would encourage you to take it. Not just because you get the free report, but because it helps people better understand the travel industry and helps you benchmark your business. So again, it's at hostagencyreviews.com/survey. And we would love for you to take it. It runs for about a little over a month. So for the next month. Well, let's see, Michelle, we've got a lot of questions that are great today. So let's start with our first one. So this one comes in from Anonymous. I started in the industry as a subagent for a very experienced travel advisor who was with a good host agency. The advisor was very helpful as I started out. They provided some training and were able to answer my questions. But as I have grown my own business, I don't call them very often these days. I'd like to have the possible perks and recognition that come from being a producer with my host agency. I don't really want to be a subagent anymore, and I did bring it up with them. They gave me a more favorable split about what I would get on my own with a host agency. But I'd like to ask someone at the host agency what I'm missing as a subagent, but I don't think they're going to answer me honestly, because they won't want to upset the person since they're one of their top advisors. I've even just thought of switching host agencies to avoid the drama, but I don't really want to start over with a host agency. I know what I need to do, but I'd appreciate your advice. Thank you. And this is coming in from Anonymous. And Michelle, I took a look before we got started and saw you have subagent programs too.
Yes.
So what would be your advice in this situation? Because this is not the first time I've heard of this in this month.
Sure. This is not the first time I've heard of this either. Actually, I deal with this pretty often, so happy to answer that. Before making any decisions, I'd recommend communication and education. So get your facts straight, make your pros and cons lists before you're making any decisions. But I really feel that the lead, they want the best for you, right? So it's very important that with your relationship, you are able to have open communication with them. So I think you kind of need to be brave and willing to explore the options. Because sometimes, we go into partnerships with the best intentions and there's growth, or you just want to venture into another area. So your lead is always going to be the person that I recommend you communicate with, but sometimes maybe that's not the first step. So there are a few suggestions. If you're not comfortable speaking with your lead, then or your host, then I would go to another advisor in your network. that is an independent advisor with a direct contract with your host agency. Have that as your first conversation and just say, hey, what do you think of, being an independent contractor with this host? What perks are you getting? What does the program look like? And you can confidentially ask those questions independently without either of the other parties involved.
That's a
Then
great idea.
once you have that laid down as an sort of an outline for yourself, then you can explore a little bit. If you're intimidated or afraid to go to the host, then maybe there's another person within that host agency that you maybe haven't had contact with yet. So ask around a little bit within your community to see if there's a person that you feel is approachable for you to have that conversation with them, just so you can get the facts about what their program looks like and what benefits or perks there are. And then once you've laid that out next to what the advisor says, then I think you really need to evaluate. Some of the questions that I have asked our sub agents when they've brought this topic to me. Okay, are you ready to go out on your own? Do you have enough education and enough tenure in the business to go at this? Is there, some sort of synergy that you would really be missing by not being with that lead anymore that you have to consider? Because sometimes there is flexibility within a team model and there's additional support. So I would look at that. But ultimately, your relationship is with your lead. So I think after you've done the layout of your educational pieces, then it's time to kind of balance your priorities and speak to that lead. Looking at your perks, looking at your recognition, looking at maybe what your new business model is going to be, and having that conversation with them ultimately. Coming to that decision. I think people are usually very reasonable. Sometimes maybe it's an introductory conversation and then a follow-up conversation, because sometimes it might take, the lead by a little bit of a surprise, but then when you revisit it again with some, additional information and facts, it'll help sort of guide you. And ultimately, you have to do what's right for your business and for yourself.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that the lead agent that you're working with understands that as another business owner, that sometimes someone outgrows and needs to go out on their own, and that's just kind of something you have to accept when you're in business as a host agency. I know when I was working at a host agency, like sometimes that would happen and it would be like, I want the best for someone that's running their business. And if that's what they think is the best, then go for it. They know their business the best. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's great. Thanks for that practical
Now,
advice there.
anonymous, like make your list, go out and have your conversations. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think host agencies will just answer those questions because they do want you to have the information. But we would never proceed with anything unless there's agreement between that lead as well.
hmm And I think like one of the things for people that are sub advisors, one of the big components that they're looking for is that recognition for their sales because
Sure.
they're underneath that um, the sub agent model. And so it really would depend as well what your sales are, because you'll be able to tell what the sales margins are for recognition within your host agency and if you're actually going to be hitting those. So that's something to keep in mind too. And I just wanted to pull up just to give some numbers here. So we talked about our survey that we're doing right now. So the report, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly and bring up the report, because one of the things is we talk about the kind of the sub agent model.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely something that is growing within the hosted advisor community. So in 2022, we had 16% of hosted advisors had ICs underneath them. So so this is a great place. For those of you that are listening, I'm just going to the report and I'm pulling up underneath hosted advisor operations. And you can see that if we're looking here, the hosted agency owners, do they have ICs and or employees? And you can see that 13% had ICs only, and then another 3% had both ICs and employees. So 16% of hosted people actually are kind of doing this sub-agent
Sure.
model, and we're seeing that grow, which is really interesting.
I think it makes
And
sense. It makes sense for different business models, just because you then have additional coverage. And if your book of business is then full, you can create a lead funnel as well to your subs.
mhm. And then the other thing I want to show really quickly before we move on to the next question. So I talked a little bit about how I looked at Travel Edge's profile. So I'm just going to the site, clicking on Travel Edge's profile, and I'm going to show you where you can tell if they have sub-agent programs or not. So here underneath program details on the host agency profiles, you can see there's the allow sub-agents, and they'll either be a green checkbox or a red circle with a cross through it to indicate whether or not they have those programs and allow those programs. All right. So next question. Let's see. How do you select oh, this is a big question. How do you select a niche when you are a brand new travel advisor? And this is coming in from Gary.
Oh,
All right, Michelle.
all right. So, Gary, this is actually a fun one because I honestly believe, and I tell my kids this all the time, I came up in an entrepreneurial family. You can create a business out of anything. So, for instance, I have one of our advisors that I'm working with right now who is passionate about all things coffee. And she has actually found a really good niche market within that, looking at different countries that are, heavy in the coffee industry, as well as coffee plantations. There are different experiences out there. So she's able to create this unique niche, within the travel scape. I think there's so many options. So ask yourself a couple of questions to narrow it down. I think you need to be passionate about whatever it is you're going to sell. So this is a long game. I've been doing this for, gosh, over 25 years. And so I really still feel I'm passionate about the travel industry and what we have to offer and bringing new advisors in. So really, what do you enjoy? Are there any specific countries that you know well? And then focus on, are you going to be maybe focusing on active travel, wellness, cityscapes, certain destinations or styles of travel, like put those in buckets, family, couples, education. Some of those sometimes stand out. And you'll want to be able to continue learning as well, right? This is sort of a layered career where what you now from your travel experiences is the first layer, and then you build upon that. I would also look at your friends and family, maybe what their tendencies of travel is going to be, because when you first start out, that's usually going to be your funnel, is going to be your friends and family. So you want to align your interests with that. And then one of the other things that I advise all of our advisors is to work in premium categories, but then also in luxury. So let's say, you're going to focus on experiences. Make sure if you're working with a DMC that you have a DMC that can fulfill in the premium as well as in the luxury, so that you can layer as you go along with your business. And then just, talking to others about what what you see as trends, what's coming in, I think are also important. So again, it kind of goes back to this education and, layering those pieces in, but you also want to have confidence. So as an example, years ago when I was a newer agent, I had been to Mexico several times. And one of my first clients was going to Cancun. I had just been, and I was, they were very nervous to be able to come through passport control. What do I do? I need to get money. How do I get to my transportation? And being able to go back and recollect and give that step-by-step walkthrough of what that experience looks like helps the client then have trust in the services that you're selling. So I think that confidence, has to lay in with that niche. So sell what you know, sell what you're passionate about it. And then you can always take that into other verticals and experience as you grow your network of clients and your business.
That's perfect. We also have, I'm going to, Mary will pop into the comments, but we have an
Hi, Mary.
article on finding, yeah. Hi, Mary. I thought, I was telling Michelle before this, I thought I was going to have to be in charge of putting all the links into the comments. And then I saw Mary pop up, because April's off today. And I was like, oh, great. I don't have to be doing this. I'm not very good at multitasking. So, but we have an article on the site about finding a niche that kind of walks you through the brainstorming process. It has a worksheet involved with it that kind of talks about the things Michelle does, making sure that it's somehow tied into your network. You can do things outside of your network with your family and friends. It's going to make it a lot harder because you're having to forge all new relationships, break into new circles, and we all know how difficult that is. So we'll put that in there. And then the other thing I want to mention is a great place. So this is our Friday 15, but also in this podcast feed, if you're actually listening to the audio version, is our Travel Agent Chatter podcast. And those are kind of, I'm going to show you on the site here with the screen share. Those are on the site underneath the podcast. And they're people that have very unique niches. So like Ashley does destination weddings and honeymoons. Erica does luxury travel. Latanya does affordable travel for education. We have a Disney one. So it'll give you a lot of ideas about different niches that are out there. There's about 25 or 26 different episodes right now. So I would encourage you to take a look at those. And then one last thing. So we did launch our course during host week this week. And within the course, one of the nice things is we talk about, there's a whole chapter dedicated to finding your niche. And within that, we have interviews with, 6 different advisors here that talk about how they found their niche, how did they pick it? Do they book outside their niche? Do they market outside their niche? What advice they have for new advisors that are looking to find a niche. So that's incredible information if a course is something that you're looking for right now.
You guys have the best resources.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I love this QR code. That is, it just makes it so simple, right?
I was so excited about it when I found it, and I've actually found it like 3 weeks ago, but I keep forgetting to put it on there. So on my notes, I highlighted it really big and was like, don't forget the QR code, because I've forgotten it the last few weeks. So
there's one other thing that I thought of sort of as you were going through that, and it's something that I'm a bit of a preacher. That I also think your partnerships, with our preferred partners is also very important, right? Like not making that net too wide, because you want to try and have a relationship. So if there's a problem that arises, you can get on the phone or send a text to that partner and be able to have them action resolution for you. So I also teach to, have this circle, try and utilize those same partners as much as you can to build up your portfolio with them and your recognition with them.
Oh, that makes tons of sense. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, last question. This is a bit of a doozy. And I did, after we get your thoughts on this, Michelle, I did write to a travel attorney too, because I was like,
good girl.
That's actually a great question. So this comes from Val. So thanks, Val, for asking. Hi, I'm a new travel advisor, and I'm just getting ready to launch as an IC. I am confused about the differences, as well as when and where to use which of these 3 documents and waivers. So terms and conditions, service agreement, and liability waiver. Thanks, Steph. Har has helped me so much already, Val. All right. Any thoughts on these legal documents?
Let's see how my answer compares to the legal answer. So I'm going to take these one at a time. And I think that this is about keeping your prospective and current clients informed and yourself and your business protected. So that would be my first comment. Terms and conditions, this is used for websites and for visitors knowing rules, guidelines of sites and services. You can include a section of this as part of your protection. On your blog, any images maybe that you've shared or your personal content. And anytime you have itineraries or pricing on your site, it's also helpful to have this section and this call out regarding taxes, destination, and also depending on where you're at, right? So for us, we are a host agency across North America, so we service both Canada and the US, but there are nuances within California or Florida or TICO requirements or OPC requirements that you have to also consider within terms and conditions. So that would be one for me. And as far as service agreement, now this one you have a little bit more of your own input right, as your personal business. But this is another, contract term for your client. And this outlines what your services are and what you're going to be providing for your client. And that agreement is also, very important, looking at the timeline, processes for changes, and really your commitment to service to them. So making sure that you are committing to follow through on these agreements, looking at the compensation, payment process, and then what the client might be responsible for. And what you are not liable for, and just having a disclosure of this. And sometimes these can be combined with your liability waiver in one document. And these are, the liability waiver is a release form, which just helps to minimize the risk of travel for the client. And then having your client sign one of these just to ensure, any possible minor or major issue that arises when they're traveling, that you are not responsible. And then, of course, part of our disclaimer is we advise our advisors to speak to their lawyer, have someone review it, and also an accountant, depending on, what your service agreements are going to look like, depending on how nuanced your business is. You always want someone to just, take a look at that. But we use your resources as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, as well as ASTA. So those are two references that we communicate on a regular basis to our advisors. No, you guys have it all.
Well, that's our job. So I'm glad we're keeping up on things. Well, let's see. So a couple things. We're going to put a link in to our article that has a list of specific travel industry attorneys. You can use yours as well, but there are, like Michelle said, a lot of nuances for travel. So you really should be using someone that's familiar with the travel industry and the ins and outs of it. So we'll put that in there. We'll also put a link to our article on travel agent forms for your clients. It has some templates in there that can be really helpful for you. And we have a specific article on travel waivers to protect your agency, and we'll put that in there. But this is from Tom Carpenter. So I reached out to him. He also did, if you tuned in for Host Week, he did a session, I think, on that kind of focused on terms and conditions. And we'll link to that as well in the resources. But we're going to link to his website as well. But this is what Tom says. So for the terms and conditions. So this is a document. It's a contractual agreement between you and the client, and it governs everything related to how you're working with your client. So it's going to contain a number of provisions. I just love the way he writes it because it's so legalese. It contains a number of provisions to comply with legal regulations. It's going to advise your clients on the risk of travel, so they can't say that you never warned them that, if they're going to go hang gliding, there are some risks to that. And provisions that clarify your role as the booking agent and that you are not the supplier, you're just facilitating this. And so a good terms and condition document can also protect from chargebacks and limit your damages if you do wind up getting drawn into a lawsuit. Now, for the liability waiver, Tom says it's a provision that most terms and conditions documents contain. So it basically says that your clients can't sue you for things that are not your responsibility or that are out of your control. If the motor coach gets in an accident, obviously you don't control the maintenance on the bus and the driver is not your employee. So if there is a liability waiver in your terms and conditions document, your client can agree that they cannot and will not sue you for things like the motor coach incident. And it can also protect you from policies like a no refund policy or supplier bankruptcies. He thinks that it's the most important part of any terms and conditions document. And then the client agreement, and this is the service agreement. So it can be a shorter, more user-friendly way to get your clients agree to your terms and conditions. So rather than sending your 10-page terms and conditions documents to your client every time they book a trip with you, the client agreement can be one way to protect your business without rubbing your clients' noses in a bunch of legal stuff. So since the terms and conditions are the baseline of all your trips, your client agreement can include protections that might be unique to that particular type of trip. Again, so if they're doing something with like more adventure focused, it might have some more protections within there that you've written in. So you can also include your fees in the client agreement if you're charging different fees to different clients. And you can include advisories about the availability of insurance so that you've offered it to them. And especially if you want to call your clients' attention to things like this. So that's straight from the horse's mouth of an actual attorney on what to expect there. And Tom is actually really great. He does 15-minute consultations. So if you do have specific questions about any of that, you can reach out to Tom. And again, we'll put his contact information for his attorney site. He's also a travel advisor, but we'll put his attorney site in the comments so that you'll be able to link to that. Well, let's see. So, Michelle, if anyone has any questions for you or wants to learn more about Travel Edge, we'll put the link to your profile. But what's the best way for them to reach out to you or someone at Travel Edge?
They can go to your site. We have a chat feature that will send me an email if they have a question. They can also go to our website, www.traveledge.com. And we have a Calendly link there if they want to set up a meeting just to learn a little bit more. And our website is pretty good as well. It explains our programs, kind of gives you a little bit of background of Travel Edge, a little bit of our history. So yeah, those would be the ways to get in contact with us.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us. And just to give everyone a heads up, so next week, we have Travel Leaders 365. Lindsay Taylor Lauer is going to be joining us. And then May 4th, OAL Network is going to be joining us. I believe it's going to be Chrissy from OAL. So just a reminder that if you like the Friday 15, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15. And you can go ahead and sign up for email reminders that will go over the questions we're going over this week, as well as a link to watch on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. Thank you all of you for joining us, and we will see you next Friday.
Thank you. Aloha Friday.